Sarah Everard was 33 years old when her life was taken. She lived in Brixton, South London, working as a marketing executive for a digital media company. Those who knew her described Sarah as responsible, thoughtful, and independent. She had built a life in London that reflected her personality, structured, social, and grounded in routine. Her flat in Brixton was her sanctuary, a place she returned to regularly after work, after meeting friends, after living the kind of ordinary life that millions of people live in cities across the world. On the evening of March 3, 2021, Sarah visited a friend in Clapham. It was not an unusual decision. Clapham was familiar to her, and the walk home to Brixton was one she had made many times before. The route was direct, well-lit in parts, and considered safe by those who lived in the area. Sarah left her friend's house around 9 o'clock that evening. She was dressed casually, wearing a green rain jacket, dark trousers, and white trainers. She carried her phone, her keys, and a small bag. During the walk, Sarah spoke to her boyfriend on the phone. The call lasted approximately 14 minutes. It was a normal conversation, the kind that happens between couples who are comfortable with one another. There was nothing in her voice, nothing in her behavior that suggested anything was wrong. She was simply walking home. This was not a night marked by recklessness or risk. It was ordinary, it was routine, and it should have been safe, but it was not. What happened next would change her family, her community, and the nation forever. The timeline of March 3, 2021 has been reconstructed with precision. Investigators used phone records, CCTV footage, and witness statements to piece together Sarah Everard's final movements. These details would later become critical in understanding not only what happened, but how it happened and who was responsible. At approximately 9 p.m., Sarah left her friend's residence on Leithwaite Road in Clapham. She began walking south toward Brixton, a journey of roughly 50 minutes on foot. The route took her through residential streets, past shops, and along main roads that were monitored by security cameras. At 9:13 p.m., she placed a call to her boyfriend. The call lasted 14 minutes, ending at 9:27 p.m. During this time, she was walking along the South Circular Road, heading toward Poinders Road. At 9:28 p.m., CCTV cameras captured Sarah walking alone on Poinders Road. She was moving at a steady pace, her phone visible in her hand. This was the last confirmed sighting of her while she was still free. After this moment, there are no further images of Sarah walking. There are no additional phone calls. There is no activity on her social media accounts. She simply vanished. By the following morning, March 4th, Sarah had not returned home. She did not show up for a work meeting scheduled for that day. Her boyfriend, concerned by her silence, attempted to reach her multiple times. When those attempts failed, he contacted her family. By midday, Sarah Everard was officially reported missing to the Metropolitan Police. What began as concern quickly escalated into alarm. Sarah was not someone who disappeared without explanation. She was reliable, communicative, and careful. The fact that she had gone silent was immediately recognized as deeply unusual. A missing person investigation was launched. Search teams were deployed. CCTV footage was reviewed, and slowly a darker picture began to emerge. Wayne Cousins was a serving police officer with the Metropolitan Police. On the evening of March 3, 2021, he was off duty, but he was not unarmed, and he was not without authority. He carried with him the tools of his profession, a Metropolitan Police warrant card and a set of handcuffs. He had also rented a car earlier that day, a white Vauxhall Astra, using a false name. These were not the actions of someone acting on impulse. They were the actions of someone who had planned. Cousins was working in the Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, a role that granted him significant authority and access to firearms. He was trained, trusted, and empowered by the state to enforce the law. On this night, he used that power to commit a crime. At some point after 9:28 p.m., Wayne Cousins approached Sarah Everard on Poinders Road. He was not in uniform, but he presented himself as a police officer. He showed her his warrant card. He told her she had violated COVID-19 lockdown regulations, which were still in effect at the time. He informed her that she was being arrested. Sarah Everard complied. She had no reason not to. The man in front of her had the credentials of a police officer. He had the authority of the state. She was placed in handcuffs and led to the rental car. Witnesses later reported seeing a man and a woman standing near a vehicle on Poinders Road around that time. One witness described what appeared to be an arrest. No one intervened. No one questioned it. Why would they? It looked like police business. Once inside the car, Sarah Everard was driven away from London. Cousins headed southeast toward Kent, where he lived with his wife and children. What followed was a series of violent acts that would end in her death. On March 4, 2021, Sarah Everard was officially reported missing. Her boyfriend, her family, and her friends had all tried to reach her without success. The Metropolitan Police launched a missing person investigation immediately. Given the circumstances, her sudden disappearance, her failure to appear at work, and the lack of any communication, the case was treated with urgency from the beginning. Detectives began reviewing CCTV footage from cameras along Sarah's route. They traced her movements from Leithwaite Road to Poinders Road, identifying the exact time and location of her last known sighting. They contacted her phone provider to access call records and attempted to track her mobile phone. The device had been switched off shortly after 9:30 p.m., which further raised concerns. Search teams were deployed across South London. Officers canvassed the area, speaking to residents and business owners. Posters with Sarah's photograph were distributed throughout Brixton, Clapham, and surrounding neighborhoods. Social media campaigns were launched, with thousands of people sharing her image and details of her disappearance. The case quickly gained national attention. News outlets reported on the search, and public interest grew rapidly. As the hours turned into days, the investigation intensified. Detectives expanded their search radius and began reviewing footage from a wider network of cameras. They analyzed traffic patterns and vehicle registrations. They cross-referenced data from multiple sources. And then on March 9th, a significant breakthrough occurred. CCTV footage revealed a white Vauxhall Astra in the vicinity of Poinders Road at the time Sarah disappeared. The vehicle was traced to a rental company. The name on the rental agreement led investigators to a man in Kent. That man was Wayne Cousins. On March 9, 2021, armed officers from the Metropolitan Police arrived at a residential address in Deal, Kent. The property belonged to Wayne Cousins. He was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder. His wife and children were present at the time. The arrest was swift and decisive. Cousins did not resist. He was taken into custody and transported to a London police station for questioning. Following the arrest, a major search operation was launched in Kent. Specialist teams, including forensic officers and search dogs, were deployed to woodland areas near Ashford, approximately 30 miles from Cousins' home. On March 10th, human remains were discovered hidden in a wooded area off Frid Lane. The remains were concealed inside a large builder's bag, which had been placed in a stream. The body had been burned, an attempt to destroy evidence and delay identification. Forensic pathologists were called to the scene. Dental records were used to confirm the identity of the deceased. On March 12th, the Metropolitan Police officially announced that the remains found in Kent were those of Sarah Everard. The confirmation devastated her family and shocked the nation. What had begun as a missing person case had now become a murder investigation, and the suspect was a serving police officer. Further forensic examination revealed the cause of death: compression of the neck. Sarah had been strangled. The autopsy also confirmed evidence of sexual assault. These findings, combined with the physical evidence recovered from the crime scene and Cousins' vehicle, formed the foundation of the case against him. Investigators continued to gather evidence, building a timeline that connected Cousins to every stage of the crime. The forensic trail was clear. The digital evidence was overwhelming, and Wayne Cousins, a man sworn to protect the public, was now facing charges of kidnapping, rape, and murder. The case against Wayne Cousins was built on a combination of forensic evidence, digital records, and physical artifacts. Each piece of evidence reinforced the others, creating a comprehensive and undeniable account of what had happened on the night of March 3, 2021. CCTV footage played a critical role. Cameras along Sarah's walking route captured her movements from Clapham to Poinders Road. Additional footage showed a white Vauxhall Astra in the same location at the time of her disappearance. The vehicle was later identified as the car rented by Wayne Couzens. Rental records confirmed that he had hired the car on March 3rd under a false name, a detail that suggested premeditation. Forensic teams examined the vehicle extensively. They found traces of Sarah's DNA inside the car, including hair and fibers that matched her clothing. Bloodstains were also recovered, linking her directly to the vehicle. Couzens' own DNA was found on items recovered from the crime scene, including the builder's bag in which Sarah's body had been concealed. Phone records placed both Sarah and Couzens in the same location at the time of the abduction. Sarah's phone stopped transmitting data shortly after 9:30 p.m., consistent with the timeline of her disappearance. Couzens' phone, however, continued to transmit, and its location data traced his movements from London to Kent. The autopsy confirmed that Sarah had died from compression of the neck, consistent with strangulation. Evidence of sexual assault was also documented. The builder's bag, the burned remains, and the items found at the scene all pointed to an attempt to destroy evidence and conceal the crime. Additional searches of Couzens' home revealed further incriminating material. Investigators found items that connected him to the crime, including cleaning supplies and personal belongings linked to Sarah. The cumulative weight of the evidence was overwhelming. There was no ambiguity. Wayne Couzens had abducted, raped, and murdered Sarah Everard. Wayne Couzens was 48 years old at the time of the murder. He was married and had 2 children. He lived in a quiet residential area in Deal, Kent, and to his neighbors he appeared to be an ordinary man. He worked as an armed officer in the Metropolitan Police's Parliamentary and Diplomatic Protection Command, a role that placed him at the heart of the nation's security infrastructure. He had access to firearms, official vehicles, and the authority to detain individuals. He was trusted by the state and by the public. But Wayne Couzens was not who he appeared to be. Investigations into his background revealed a troubling history. He had been linked to at least 2 incidents of indecent exposure prior to Sarah Everard's murder. In February 2021, just weeks before the crime, he was allegedly involved in an incident at a fast food restaurant in South London. Despite reports being made, the allegations were not adequately investigated. No action was taken. He remained in his position with full access to police powers and equipment. Couzens had also been flagged in previous years for inappropriate behavior, but these warnings did not result in disciplinary action or removal from duty. His continued employment as a police officer, despite these red flags, became a focal point of public outrage following Sarah's murder. It raised urgent questions about vetting procedures, accountability, and the culture within law enforcement. Wayne Couzens was not a rogue individual acting without context. He was a product of a system that failed to recognize the warning signs, failed to act on credible reports, and failed to protect the public from a man who should never have been allowed to wear a badge. Wayne Couzens appeared at the Old Bailey in London for sentencing in September 2021. He had already pleaded guilty to the charges of kidnapping, rape, and murder. There was no trial in the traditional sense, as Couzens admitted to all counts. The sentencing hearing, however, was a significant legal moment, both for the family of Sarah Everard and for the wider public. During the hearing, the court heard victim impact statements from Sarah's family. Her mother, father, and sister all spoke about the profound loss they had suffered. They described Sarah as a beloved daughter and sister, a woman with a bright future who had been stolen from them in the most horrific way. Their words were emotional, dignified, and devastating. The judge, Lord Justice Fulford, addressed the severity of the crime. He emphasized that Couzens had abused his position as a police officer, using the authority of his role to carry out a premeditated and brutal attack. The judge noted that the crime had eroded public trust in law enforcement and had caused widespread fear among women across the country. Wayne Couzens was sentenced to a whole life order, meaning he would spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. This type of sentence is reserved for the most serious offenders and is rarely imposed in the United Kingdom. It reflects the calculated nature of the crime, the abuse of power, and the exceptional harm caused to both the victim and society. The sentence was welcomed by Sarah's family and by campaigners for women's safety. It sent a clear message: those who abuse positions of trust will face the fullest extent of the law. The murder of Sarah Everard sparked a wave of public grief and anger that swept across the United Kingdom. Vigils were planned in her memory, with thousands of people expressing their desire to gather and mourn. The largest of these was scheduled to take place at Clapham Common on March 13, 2021. However, due to COVID-19 restrictions, the Metropolitan Police initially deemed the gathering unlawful. This decision ignited further controversy and criticism, particularly given the circumstances of Sarah's death. Despite police warnings, hundreds of people attended the vigil. Many brought flowers, candles, and handwritten messages. The atmosphere was somber and reflective, but tensions escalated when police officers moved in to disperse the crowd. Images of officers restraining women at a vigil for a woman murdered by a police officer were broadcast internationally. The optics were damaging, and the Metropolitan Police faced intense backlash for their handling of the event. The case became a catalyst for a broader conversation about women's safety. The Reclaim These Streets movement gained significant momentum, organizing protests and campaigns that call for systemic change. Women across the country shared their own experiences of harassment, violence, and fear. Social media became a platform for collective testimony, with millions of posts highlighting the pervasive nature of gender-based violence. Politicians, activists, and public figures weighed in on the national debate. Questions were raised about policing, about the culture within law enforcement, and about the societal structures that enable violence against women. The case also prompted discussions about the responsibilities of men in preventing violence and challenging harmful behavior. Sarah Everard's name became synonymous with the movement. Her death was not just a personal tragedy, it became a symbol of a larger struggle for safety, equality, and justice. The impact of her case extended far beyond the courtroom. It reshaped public discourse, influenced policy discussions, and galvanized a generation of activists determined to create a safer world for women. The murder of Sarah Everard had lasting consequences for law enforcement in the United Kingdom. The Metropolitan Police, already under scrutiny for a range of issues, faced unprecedented criticism in the wake of the case. The fact that a serving officer had used his position to commit such a heinous crime raised fundamental questions about vetting, oversight, and accountability. In response, the government and police organizations launched reviews into police conduct and recruitment practices. The Home Office announced new measures aimed at improving the vetting process for officers, with a particular focus on identifying individuals with histories of violence or misconduct. Additional resources were allocated to investigating reports of inappropriate behavior within police forces. The case also led to the introduction of new legislation. The Police, Crime, Sentencing, and Courts Act 2022 included provisions that increased penalties for certain offenses and expanded police powers in some areas, though these measures were controversial and sparked debate about civil liberties. Beyond policing, Sarah Everard's case became a defining moment in the fight against violence toward women. Her name is invoked in campaigns, protests, and policy discussions. Organizations dedicated to women's safety have used her story to advocate for changes in how society addresses harassment, assault, and murder. Sarah Everard's legacy is not just about her death, it is about the conversations her case inspired, the reforms it prompted, and the collective determination to ensure that no other woman suffers the same fate. Her family has called for meaningful change, not just symbolic gestures, and while progress has been made, the work continues. The fight for safety, for justice, and for a world where women can walk home without fear remains urgent and unfinished.